Welcome back to the program. Let's take you to Kenya, where dormitories at 3 schools have been set ablaze in the latest unrest to hit schools in the East African state. The inferno swept through the St. Mary's Girls' School, Kathira Boys Secondary School and Kandiji Mixed Secondary School, all in 3 different counties in the country. Reports say no one was injured, but students at the dormitory of Kandiji Mixed Secondary School in eastern Meru County lost all their belongings in the blaze. In recent times, schools have been hit by strikes in protest against the introduction of tough measures aimed at curbing cheating in examinations, scheduled to start in 3 months. Police authorities say the cause of the fires have not yet been established. Let's get more on this story from George Orido, a Kenyan communications specialist. Thanks for joining us on Network Africa.
Thank you.
George, what more can you tell us about this incident?
Well, not much has really come out, but many more schools are going to the rampage and banning schools and getting schools closed. Some schools are even preempting these disturbances and getting closed before anything is happening. And that is most of them are happening right now in the region of Nyanza, which is the far western part of Kenya and the border of Uganda. And it is not very clear why all this is happening. But hindsight has it that there was a recent change of guard in most of the schools, a very radical change by the immediate former Minister for Education, Dr. Fred Matiang'i, that asked head of schools to come from one end of the country to another to change guard. And that has really kind of caused a distortion in the systems of the way schools are being run, in the individual schools. And that has been suspected to cause all this.
George, do we have any idea who the perpetrators are and what could be motivating them?
Well, we have a rough idea that those who are involved are students, and because these new principals have come with their own rules and regulations, how things are done, and that has not really pleased some of them. For example, the first school that had this incident was Kisumu Girls High School, where the new principal from Lugulu Girls was a little bit strict on matters of entertainment, or watching TV. For example, from where she was in Lugulu, when watching programs like the Niger movies, which is very popular here, by the way, when there was a scene where there's kissing and all that, then they will close the television forward it. And it did not go very well with the students. So they felt like they're living more of a caged system, and therefore the kind of protests we've had. And unfortunately, schools have been banned and properties have been lost in the wake of this.
So what will happen to the students who have now been displaced from their dormitories? Will they be compensated?
Well, I hardly doubt. In the history of school rampages, at the end of the day, the teachers, not the teachers, but the parents who normally bear the burden, because when they're being called back to school, all parents are required to pay a certain amount as a fine, and that is never negotiable. Even 2 years ago, when this rampage was so high that nearly 100 schools were involved, and at the end of the day, it's the parents who bear the burden to buy all this, and it is collective. It is collective punishment. It doesn't matter whether your child was involved or not, and you pay back things. And I think that will not change in anything in the near future.
So what has been the government's response to all this? What are they doing to restore law and order?
Well, school closure is one of the responses at the school. When the rampage is happening, the schools are closed, so the students are going back home as things are put in place. But also, I had one of the senior government officials, the Director of Public Prosecutions, saying that students will be found to be culpable in this activity will be arrested, arraigned in court, and jailed, and they'll be treated like any other criminal. Well, that is unprecedented, because normally it's an out-of-court settlement. Wherever these culprits are found, they never taken court as such unless a desert occurred. This time around, no deaths have occurred, but properties have been lost.
Kenyan communication specialist George Orido, thank you so much for joining us on Network Africa.
Thank you very much.
In the Democratic Republic of Congo, ethnic violence in Africa's second-largest country has spread and worsened since 2016. According to a UN report in March, thousands of children have been reported missing in DR Congo's displacement camps.
Displaced by fighting in the Democratic Republic of the Congo's east, thousands of civilians have been forced to seek shelter in camps in the country's Tanganyika province. Many of the women at Kalami camp may have sought shelter here, but they remain anxious, not knowing the whereabouts of their children, kidnapped by militias who attacked their villages.
I am in pain. My heart is hurting. I can't sleep. My body is in pain. Life is hopeless. Who will get my children back from me?
Displaced civilians in Tanganyika province have shared stories of horrific violence, including killings, abductions and rapes carried out as their villages came under attack. 52-year-old Ndiba Kaiti counts herself amongst the lucky few. Her 5 teenage daughters were kidnapped in December 2016. They were found 5 months later in the bush, where they had been starved, beaten and abused.
When I found them, they were in a bad state. They were so thin, their feet were wounded, their skin had changed, their eyes were filled with sadness. But the day I found my children, I was happy.
Humanitarian officials from foreign donors and aid agencies repeatedly say that the crisis is worsening and that the country's needs are well short of being met. The crisis in Congo's perpetually volatile east, where conflict, hunger and disease killed millions in civilian wars around the turn of the century, has been further fueled by President Joseph Kabila's refusal to step down when his constitutional mandate expired in 2016. President Kabila, however, denies clinging to power and says that elections have been delayed because of logistical problems. Over 13 million Congolese need humanitarian aid, twice as many as last year, and 7.7 million face severe food insecurity, according to a United Nations report in March, as militia violence spikes across much of the country's eastern borderlands.
And that's it on Network Africa. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Temitope Fagbemi.